of Karti, and with your permission, we've been hearing about it all month, but I'd like to read a little more about Dhammagarvita. So, all right. Let's start with Srila Prabhupada's purport to Bhagavad Gita, verse 49. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is chapter 4, verse 9 from I'm sure many of you know this, so please repeat it. Janma karma chame divyam. Janma karma chame divyam. Evam yo veti tattvataha. Evam yo veti tattvataha. Tva deham punarjanma. Tva deham punarjanma. Naitimam iti sorjuna. Naitimam iti sorjuna. Please repeat the translation. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. Purport. The Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the 6th verse. What was the 6th verse? Anyone remember? Right? Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of everyone, still I appear in everyone in my original transcendental form. One who understands the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage, and therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting the present material body. Such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. The impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many births. And even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal existence of the Lord, is only partial, and there is every risk of returning to the material world. But the devotee of Krishna, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of Krishna's body and activities, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body and does not run the risk of returning to the material world. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Lord has many forms and incarnations. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Ananta, Rupam. Although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. This is the amazing gift we have from Srila Prabhupada, the Janma, birth, and karma activities of Lord Krishna. In my previous upbringing, I did not have any notion about God being a person. And if there was any notion, it was one of a long bearded man touching Adam on the Sistine Chapel. In that painting by Michelangelo, there are many persons depicted, but God is the one with the longest beard. That's how you know. And he's got to be the oldest dude if he's the original. And yet, we see Krishna is Navayoma. He is always appearing just like a fresh youth. So I thought about it. I thought, if I were God, would I want to be an old man or a young man? Like the whole notion of God understood. It was a vengeful, jealous person who was ready to mete out punishment to anybody who dared violate his laws. So that would kind of relegate God's activity every day to the universal judge. Everyone's brought before him, heaven, hell, heaven. What a boring existence. That reminds me, can I share a joke with you? A joke from my Christian church. So the preacher was standing up in front of the congregation, giving a impassioned sermon. And he said, "Who wants to go to heaven? If you want to go to heaven, stand up." Everyone stood up. Now, who doesn't want to go to hell? If you don't want to go to hell, sit down. Everyone sat down except one guy in the back. One guy in the back is standing up. He said, Brother Johnson, you want to go to hell? I said, Pastor, I just thought you wouldn't want to go by yourself. The point is that theology that is based on coercion and threat leaves no room for affection, right? We obey because we're afraid not to. That is not really affection, is it? It is intimidation, it is threat. And without understanding the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities, what else is left but to be afraid of God? I learned in my Christian upbringing, with all due respect, I mean, Christ is our group. It's just what has become of his teachings is something else. What I learned from them is that I should fear God and I could love the things of the world. As long as I feared God, I could love the things of the world. And then Prabhupada taught me I could love God and fear the things of the world. Fear, exactly, but be cautious. So this is why Krishna is saying here, this section of the Gita is very interesting because it's such a real question that Arjuna asks. I mean, all throughout the Gita, Arjuna is on an emotional roller coaster, isn't he? At the beginning, he's very confident. Take me, because he's so confident, he's telling God to drive him between the armies. Take me between the armies so I can see who I have to kill. And then he becomes depressed, shocked, overwhelmed. But these are people I don't want to kill, they're my loved ones. And then he wants to quit. And then he finally says, I don't know what to do. Krishna, tell me. So then Krishna responds by saying, well, you're being kind of stupid. Anyone who thinks that this physical body is itself is uneducated. So then Arjuna is listening, but he's skeptical. So he asks at the beginning here of chapter 4 a question. It's almost like a gotcha question for Krishna. Krishna starts off the chapter by saying, so I had taught this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vipaswan, who then taught Manu and started this whole chain of teachers. Arjuna says, wait a minute. Vipaswan is so much older than you are. You and I are contemporaries. Vipaswan lived millions of years ago. How could you have taught him? So this is the first time in the Gita where Krishna discloses his divinity to Arjuna very directly. Many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. So then Arjuna, I really appreciate how he's asking that skeptical question. And then again in chapter 5, he asks a skeptical question. Remember? It says, now on one hand, you're telling me to meditate on you personally. On the other hand, you tell me to cultivate knowledge, which is better. And then in chapter 6, another skeptical question, right? What is that one? Anyone remember? The chapter on yoga.
If somebody dies and he has not fulfilled his spiritual, materially also he's lost.
That's a good question, but before that, he asked another question.
Which one? Which you guys? I mean,
That's
It says, no, that's correct. What he says, yeah, to control the mind, you want me to control the mind, better we control the wind, right? Sarcasm, isn't it? He's very sarcastic. Better we try to control the wind. But then he says, what happens if I take up yoga, but then I'm unsuccessful? Then I'm a loser in the material world and a loser in spiritual life. I've given up my material ambitions to pursue spiritual life, but I've failed. So I'm at no position in either world. And what does Krishna say? One who does
never goes away.
One who does good is never overcome by evil. Right. So this is the skepticism Arjuna expresses. Finally, in chapter 10. From Dhamma, from Brahma, from Brahma, from Dhamma, Abhikam Paramam Brahma. He says, Krishna, now I accept. Now I see you are the supreme pure. And all the great sages in the past, Asita, Deva, and Narada, they all said the same thing. Now you are saying it about yourself. Now all I ask is please tell me how to meditate on it. You see how his emotions have changed. But then he gets even a little overconfident. What does he ask next? Could I see your universal form? Could I see your majestic, all-powerful form? Krishna is very obliging, he says yes. And then Arjuna's emotions take a whole other turn. First, he's awestruck by this incredible sight. Then he says, oh my God, you're killing everybody. Who are you? And then he says, what? Time I am. Time I am. Ernest Hemingway, the famous author, said that every person's story ends the same way, only the details differ. So when he sees that God is also death, then Arjuna is frightened. That's sort of the Judeo-Christian idea. Okay, I'm afraid of God. In fact, many of the editions of Bhagavad Gita, the ones that have been out there in English for decades, centuries even, but have failed to make anyone a devotee of Krishna, they often say that this is the dramatic conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna scares, he scares the heck out of Arjuna. Everything else after that is just kind of anticlimactic. But in fact, after Arjuna becomes frightened, seeing Krishna's ferocious form of time, then he becomes very contrite. Oh, I treated you so informally. I sat on the bed with you. I dressed you as my friend. I made jokes with you. And then Krishna, what does Krishna do? He returns to his original form because he doesn't like that. He doesn't want people just obsequiously bowing to him. There was give a cross-cultural reference. Has anyone ever heard of Monty Python? They're an English comedian group, and they made a film kind of mocking churchianity. And so in this film, these knights are on a quest looking for the Holy Grail, and then they're praying, they're bowing to God, and God says, quit groveling. He doesn't like, in other words, this mood of fear in Arjuna. He likes the mood of friendship and love. And so he said, look, you asked to see this form, now I'm returning to the form that you know. Because he doesn't like us to be afraid of him. He wants our love, not our fear. So this way, Arjuna goes through all these emotional diversions in half an hour, short conversation. At the end, he's again right back where he started, confident. All right, now I'm sure we're going to win. But what has changed? He started off confident, went through all these emotional changes, and then he ends up confident again. What is the difference between the beginning and the end?
He's a transparent person.
He's going to fight, but why is he going to fight?
Because now he's considering as his duty to serve Krishna.
Yes, this is Krishna's desire for him to fight, exactly. Right. What was Krishna's purpose in coming to the earth in the first place? Yes, to establish Dharma, but from the Bhagavatam, from the temple.
Complete verse.
To eradicate Kaitava Dharma.
Yes, but specifically, why did he come? Who was asking?
To give pleasure to the devotees.
Lessen the burden on those babies.
Yes. The earth was burdened by excessive military forces. And so through the demigods, they approached Lord Vishnu. He said, don't worry, Krishna will come. So Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight. Why? To reduce the excessive military buildup. The armies are killing each other. What more efficient way could there be to accomplish his mission? So this is the point. Krishna's purpose is to help his devotees to deal with the evil in the world, but he also displays his pastime. And the pastimes bring great joy to the devotees, and they give the connection that is so crucial for loving God. You can't love somebody you don't know, right? My wife and I are celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary next week. And if I were to meet you here today, and I said, My wife and I were been married 40 years. You might say, oh, which one is she? Is she the tall one or the short one? I don't know. She over here, over there. You see, but I love her. You see, would you believe me? If you don't know who you're loving, how can you say you love them? Sometimes you see the license plate, by heart God, bumper stickers, but who? Who is stranger? So Krishna displays his pastime so that we can understand the person we are loving. And this is kindness. So of course this month we're celebrating the Damodar Lila. With your permission, I'll read a little Damodar Lila for you. Yes, please. Okay, we'll just take. Okay. So, excuse me. One of the services I love to do is take Prabhupada's books and put them into a form that, as far as possible, recreates what a person who knows Sanskrit would experience if that person is listening in English. Okay, so this is the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, essentially an English poetry. And I'll just read the Damodar Lila. I think it will take about 10 minutes. We're going to put the words up on the screen so you can see it by first technology. You're good. Oh, I'm sorry, Rahina. Yes. You get, it's good being old. You have an excuse for it. So, yes, when Krishna was a young boy, something like Radharaman, a little older, a little rascal, he was famous for stealing butter. Actually, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj were very concerned about the character development of their son. He was, at a young age, he was a murderer and a thief. Sorry. Funny, somebody was saying about Lord Chaitanya. We won't be able to connect. You don't have the cable? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Anybody have HDMI cable here? Do it through Zoom. Okay.
To Zoom.
Yeah, we can connect it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, right. So somebody was saying about Lord Chaitanya, if you were to see his horoscope, Lord Chaitanya has got his astrological chart done. Short life, unhappy marriage, insanity. So, yes, Krishna's very all-attractive pastime here as a young boy is so sweet that it's celebrated for this whole month every year. And the reason it's celebrated is we sang in this beautiful prayer by Satyavrat that the love that Mother Yashoda had was what allowed her to conquer him, who otherwise could not be conquered by anybody. So Krishna becomes subservient to his love, the love of his devotees. And our purpose is to develop love for Krishna, the mood of Mother Yashoda. Of course, her position is very special because she controls Krishna. And Krishna is a little selective about who he lets control him. Not just anybody. So her love for Krishna is considered even on a higher plane than Devaki is externally his mother. Because Yashoda never knew Krishna as anything but her beloved son. Whereas Devaki and Vasudeva understood to an extent that Krishna is God. And he did not like that. And so he began speaking in a very sweet way to him. Can you see?
You need to share.
So Krishna began saying, okay, so Krishna began saying to his mother, Vasudeva, the foster parents can be very affectionate, but if we had only been able to stay with you, we would have had so much love for you. And as he was speaking in this heart-rending way, Devaki and Vasudeva were shedding tears, and Devaki's breasts were expressing milk, and they felt so much parental affection that then they could embrace it, but not until then. But Mother Yashoda, on the other hand, she never thought, even when she saw the universe in Krishna's mouth, she never thought of him as God. Maybe Nanda Maharaj was always a very simple guy. Nanda Maharaj was very simple. Maybe Krishna's a demigod. All right, so this is the Damodar test. And this is, by the way, this is verse for verse from the 10th canto. One day, as all her servants were engaged with other chores, Lord Krishna's mother saw the butter churn had been ignored. So she collected yogurt to make butter for the day, and as she churned, she sang a song describing Krishna's plight. She loved to make up Krishna songs to memorize and sing so she could think of Krishna as she did most things. She sang and pulled the churning rope, her yellow starry voice from breast milk, bored of love she felt, just thinking of her boy. Her bangles bounced and sang along. Her earrings danced in time. Her body shook from labor and her temperature climbed. As beads of perspiration broke across her lovely brow, the flowers fluttered from her hair like petals from a bough. Into the room Lord Krishna toddled. He just woken up. He snatched his mother's churning rod and tried to interrupt, for he was feeling hungry after such a lengthy nap. His mother then embraced the Lord and sat him on her lap. When Yashoda saw Krishna's face, milk poured out from her breasts. Her son desired nursing, and she granted his request. The two were sitting happily in motherly repose when Yashoda remembered she'd left milk upon the stove. She dashed to save the milk. Lord Krishna gave an angry squeal, upset to be disrupted in the middle of his meal. He bit his lips with baby teeth, picked up a nearby rock, and broke apart the butter pot with one well-measured knock. He reached inside for lumps of yellow butter, freshly churned, and quickly slipped outside before his mother could return. On seeing all the chaos, Yashoda was mildly irked, for she could understand the mess was Krishna's hand. While sitting on an upturned mortar meant for grinding spice, Lord Krishna felt quite satisfied. He easily enticed delighted village monkeys to eat butter from his hand, though now and then he'd glance about in fear of what they'll do. While Krishna went on feeding all the monkeys for some time, he did not see his mother creep up softly from behind. The crows who'd come to watch the fun saw trouble on the way. As Yashoda drew nearer, they jumped up and flew away. The startled Krishna turned and saw his mother and her stick. He ran, his butter-laden footsteps falling short and quick. His mother ran behind and tried to capture God himself, though he eludes great yogis and most everybody else. Her heavy breasts were burdensome upon her slender waist, and as she ran behind her son, her hair fell out of place. Because she loved her Krishna, Yashoda did not complain. Very soon she captured him and asked him to explain. The fearful Krishna then confessed. He then began to cry. His tears mixed with the blackish ointment worn beneath his eyes, creating tainted teardrops that he rubbed across his face. His mother smiled and held his hand, so he could not escape. Absorbed in the motherly affection, Yashoda could not see God himself left behind that broken butter pot. Observing Krishna's fearful face and all the tears he shed, she threw away her whipping stick and tied him up instead. Now, Krishna has no start or end, no front or back or side. He's everywhere and everything, and still personified. Both time and karma come from him, so he's beyond their scope. And Yashoda thought she could bind him with a simple rope. By love alone would Krishna ever let himself be bound. When Yashoda picked up the rope and tried, she quickly found that it was just a little short. She tied on more, and then she found the lengthened rope was just a little short again. She added on another rope, too short. She tried another. Yet Krishna's tiny waist was still too large for his poor mother. The gopis in the neighborhood all giggled at the fun, and Yashoda laughed too, though all this puzzled everyone. While Yashoda was trying hard to check her naughty son, her body was perspiring and her hair had come undone. On seeing that his mother's strength was quickly running down, Lord Krishna felt compassionate and let himself be bound. Though Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and such great exalted souls who rule the very cosmos are in Krishna's full control, Govinda has a feature that's exceptionally sublime. He's bound by his devotees' love, as he showed at this time. 1,000,000 goddesses of fortune dance to Krishna's flute. Yet he steals butter as if he were poor and destitute. The god of death, the dread of all, fears Krishna's slight command. Yet Krishna fears his mother with a whipping stick in hand. The mercies shown to Yashoda, whose selfless love was pure, surpasses all Brahma, Shiva, or Lakshmi could secure. Ascetics, speculators, or the ordinary man cannot reach God as easily as pure devotees can. Bound tightly to the heavy border by his mother's hand, child Krishna took his punishment as bravely as a man. When Yashoda went back inside to clean the broken pot, the Lord observed a pair of Arjun trees near his spot. These trees had quite a history, and Krishna knew it well. The two were once Kubera's sons and shared their father's wealth. One day, the youthful brothers played on Shiva's lush estate by splashing holy Ganga water in their drunken state. Celestial damsels came along, and in that sacred place, like maddened, drunken elephants, the youths took their embrace. Intoxicated, laughing, not restrained in any way, the young gods rolled their drunken eyes and passed their merry day. Just then, by their good fortune, saintly Narada appeared. The damsels quickly snatched their clothes and hid themselves in fear. The two sons of Kubera, though, were drunk and didn't care, and stood in front of Narada with nothing on but hair. Surmising for a moment the condition of these youths, the sage resolved to help them understand a higher truth. As parents pinch awake a sickly child they need to nurse, Saint Narada decided to assign the two a curse. Said Narada, material resources, my dear boys, like beauty, education, or the fame you both enjoy, are all surpassed by money, for it makes men very proud. The rich drink wine and have more sex than others are allowed. The rich man, smug and satisfied with all that he's acquired, quite often grows malicious in pursuit of his desires. To please the mortal flesh he loves and thinks will never die, he murders helpless creatures just for sport and exercise. He does not see the suffering he'll bring himself, the fool, when his fine body ends up ashes, worms, or vulture stool. He thinks his body durable, long-lived, and very strong, and never asks to whom the body actually belongs. Does one's employer own his body? Does his mother dear? Or is it a possession of the king or the premier? At death, the family puts one's body on a funeral pyre. Is it the asset of the eldest son who lights the fire? Do slave owners possess the body due to bill of sale? Or is it owned by at death by dogs who eat and wag their tails? In fact, the body comes from sand and goes back into sand, as anyone who thinks about it surely understands. Illusion makes the rich try to enjoy what they cannot. But poor folks, on the other hand, can hardly give a thought to sense enjoyment, seeking as they do a decent meal. In poverty, one learns how other starving people feel. A hungry person has no extra energy to chase the sins of wine and meat and needless sexual embrace. Impoverished people therefore gain the merits of the saint who lives without such pleasures by deliberate restraint. Avoiding wealthy sense enjoyers, saints live with the poor, another reason destitute and spiritually mature. Because you boys are rich and think your bodies are yourselves, your only hope to learn the truth is through some special help. Your drinking and illicit sex have made your brain so numb, like trees you stand there naked, and so trees you shall become. 100 godly years from now, you both shall have the grace to reacquire your freedom and see Krishna face to face. Saint Narada then left, and through his mystic energies, the two sons of Kubera turned into a pair of trees. They stood there many, many years until that very day when Krishna, mortar dragged behind him, slowly crawled their way. Lord Krishna thought, I have no obligation to this pair, but Narada, my dear devotee, took them in his care. He wanted me to see them. Let his prophecy now come so they can rectify what they had previously done. With this, the Lord called further on his tiny hands and knees. The heavy mortar wedged between the bases of the trees. The rope bound to his belly strained, but Krishna seemed to glide. He crawled a little further, and both trees crashed through his sides. Then, from the fallen branches, leaves and trunks began to rise. Two brilliant, glowing gods with folded hands and downcast eyes. Their beauty lit the very earth, yet as they bowed their heads before the toddler Krishna, they looked up a bit and said, okay, now this part is audience participation, right? You have to sing these prayers that the demigods are offering. Are you ready? I'll start and you can follow along. O Krishna, the greatest of mystics, our Lord, O cause of all causes, our lives are restored. Your dear servant Narada called you and us, transcendent creator, you sanctified us. The planets and stars are within your control, yet you are the director of each spirit soul. You know all the secrets of every heart, yet fools think of you as their hope and heart. Unless you disclose yourself, who can perceive that you are beyond what the mind can conceive? We won't try to analyze all that you do. Instead, we most humbly bow down before you. Since Narada cursed us and cured our disease, our hands are now pledged to serve your devotees. Without their intrusion, our lives were condemned. May we see them always and serve you through them. The two young gods just prayed as Krishna smiled to hear the sound. I freed these two, he thought, yet I remain completely bound. He said to them, Saint Narada indeed is very kind. Your mad desire for opulence made both of you go blind. As darkness disappears before the presence of the sun, the presence of the saints at once enlightens everyone. You both fell down from heaven and were born as naked trees. Now go back with my blessings and remain my devotees. The two sons of Kubera bowed, enormously inspired. Lord Krishna's gift, devotion, was the wealth they now desired. Ecstatic with the blessing saintly Narada bestowed, they circled round their bound-up Lord and rose to their abode. Ishi Damodar Vivaki Jai. Thank you. But enjoy that. So these are Krishna's eternal pastimes. So many. This is just one. So many. And all that we have from Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is just a tiny reflection of all the pastimes that exist. In fact, this Krishna consciousness movement is an extension of Krishna's pastime. One of my mentors once said that. Actually, he wrote to Srila Prabhupada, asked the Prabhupada to confirm. Yes, when you introduce somebody to Krishna consciousness, you are making tasteful arrangements for Krishna to reunite with his devotees, just like the gopis in Vrindavan. They want to see, the gopis are such devoted servants of Krishna that they don't want to be with Krishna themselves, they want to bring others to Krishna. And this is the mood of the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. So when we're taking part in it in this way and sharing Krishna consciousness, this is Krishna Lila extended to Farmington Hills, Novi, or wherever you may be. Yare Daha Tarhe Kaha Krishna Upadesh Amara Yai Guru Antaradesh. This was Lord Chaitanya's instruction. Whoever you meet, wherever you go, just tell them about Krishna. In this way, you become the guru and try to liberate you. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Thank you very much. Any reflections, questions?
Anyone has any question, comment that they want to add?
Okay. This is going to be a good question.
Oh, it's not a good question. I wanted to know where I could get that book he just read from. Not the Bhagavad Gita,
For the poet,
yeah.
okay, thank you. And she's not a shill, she's not someone I planted for, yes, I will address that. Daisy is a philosopher. So, in her quest for understanding truth, somehow you had a dream about Krishna
Yeah,
on the bank of a river
yeah.
with Radharani.
I didn't know her name at the time, but yeah. I had a dream.
And that sounds like a nice dream. So this is the thing, Krishna is in the heart of everybody. And he's inviting us all the time, please, as a super soul. He's giving us little clues here and there, but he's, as he says in the Gita, they surrender to me, I reward you for it. We're not sure about Krishna, Krishna's not sure about us. We don't want to look at Krishna, Krishna doesn't look at us. He just reflects because he loves us so much. Whatever it is, he wants to. So if we just turn to Krishna and say, Krishna, please accept me as your servant, then he's so happy to reciprocate. Srila Prabhupada said, if we take one step towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us. So it's so nice to give, and everybody can share this Krishna consciousness. It said, Bharati Bhumi Hoyla Dusya Janma Sarva. Those who are born in India have a great advantage. They have immediately an affinity automatically for Krishna and Vedic culture. But what Srila Prabhupada showed is that one Indian would reach the whole world. And that's why he's such an inspiration for us all. So let us continue in the mood of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. You actually saw your prayer, right? So that led your conversation and invitation here today.
Compassionate activity of Krishna.
So thank you, Srila Prabhupada. That was very nice. It just shows what can be done. So, any thoughts or questions? Yes, Prabhu. Questions are a sign of intelligence. Okay? Bhagavatam is full of questions. So,
Please accept my humble obeisance to the dust of his lotus feet, Prabhuji. Very grateful to hear you, very inspiring to hear you. My question is that while sharing Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada writes in a purport that only the pure devotee can really preach. So, while sharing Krishna consciousness, how to be in the mood that this is Srila Prabhupada's wealth, this is the wealth of the spiritual master and the pure devotee, which is not mine. So, how to not become proud or think that I am speaking because I'm not qualified.
yes, because we have been given such incredible knowledge. So, what is to prevent us from becoming proud? It is a question of realization. If we really have understood the knowledge, we also understand our position. Correct? So, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, begins his songs, many of his songs in Sharanagati, or at least sections of Sharanagati, beautiful prayers, by expressing his fallen condition. He says, I have no pious deeds, I have never performed any bhajan, any service. If you look, you'll find no good qualities in me. This is how he begins his presentation of Krishna consciousness. So realization means that we see that we have made a lot of mistakes and we are contrite about them. That we're only reason we're in the mess we are in this world is because of our own past decisions. So really, who are we to teach anyone anything? All we can do is be a medium for the knowledge that we have been given by the Pacific succession, and let's try to present that. If we present it in that mood of humility, it has effect. If we present it in a proud way, then we're just more religious fanatics. The word philosophy without, or rather religion without philosophy, without a true understanding of our position, is just sentiment or fanaticism. And that's why people have become so discouraged with religion in America. I don't know if you're aware, but much of the world sees America as a very religious country. In other parts of the first world, in Australasia, Europe, religion is just, it's just archaic. It's something from the past. It is unsophisticated. It's for the simple-minded. Churches are closed, and people no longer practice any sort of religious practice. When they look at America, where people are still relatively active in their churches, like, wow, that's a really fanatic country. So the point is, don't be fanatic. We judge Palena Parachiyate. If the way we present Krishna consciousness is effective, if it brings people to Krishna, that is because we have been transparent via medium for the message.
Sorry, one more question, it's okay. Just curious, sorry if it's a little personal, but it's very attractive. Your poetry is very attractive, and it's very deep also. So this, the Prabhupada says the nature of a devotee to poetry. And Prabhupada said he himself was also like that. So can you shed some light on how that quality develops?
Poetry needs to, as Krishnadas Kaviraj says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, essential truth inside is spoken is true eloquence. So poetry needs to measure each word more carefully than you would in ordinary conversation. Right? So, and if you putting it in meter and rhyme needs even more carefully. So Srila Prabhupada put the Bhagavad Gita in 1962. Prabhupada was living alone in Vrindavan, working on the Srimad Bhagavatam. It was an impossible task with a manual typewriter and no help, translating a whole Srimad Bhagavatam and commenting on it. And he took time off to put the Bhagavad Gita into Bengali poetry, and published it in one of his godbrother's newspapers, Bengali newspaper. And he called this the Gita Gan, the song of the Gita. So that inspired me, how we could condense these philosophical ideas to simple couplets that a common person can understand. We took the Gita Gan and published it in Bengali. Years later, when Bhaktivedanta Book Trust started, and he published it in Bengali, and it was wildly, still is very popular. So that was my first inspiration to try to follow this footsteps. So I put Bhagavad Gita as it is in English in this book, in poetry, and to try to reach a younger audience, I took that and put it into rap. Now my friend Swami Krishna Prabhu in Calcutta and I now we actually translated Prabhupada's Gita Gan into English for the first time.
Yeah.
Word for word synonyms and then English poetry, poetic, and it's full of nuances that are not in Bhagavad Gita as it is because it's kind of a commentary woven into the translation.
Is it available now?
It will be available this month. For Gita Jayanti, we hope to have it on Amazon. So, but that was my inspiration. And then after doing that, I went on and did the first canto and then the second canto. So, I'm just, as a non-Sanskritist and just native English speaker, basically, I just wanted to try to understand what would it be like to hear Shukadev speak. So that was the idea. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the mic.
Go ahead, I'll repeat your question. Daisy.
It's a pretty long question.
Okay, then we have mine. Is this a philosophical question?
Yes, this time it's philosophical.
Right.
So after I finished my graduate studies, I wanted to move my life to lifetime retreat. I've been practicing Buddhism for at least 11 years. And from a very young age, I really looked down on wealth. But as a graduate student, I'm very poor. And the story you just told about was about devotion being the greatest wealth. I spend a lot of time praying, meditating, and trying to be as devoted as possible. But I also really desperately need money. And I think that now being poor, I feel like I have a lot of regret over not spending more time making money or being more attentive to money. And that's important. But I would also feel like, did I make a mistake? And what my teacher taught me was that wealth is illusory, and that when one prays for wealth, you have to make sure you're doing it to benefit all beings. Otherwise, it becomes like poison. And I just wanted you to kind of discuss that, this kind of tension between being poor and you need money. Like I need money so I can buy medicine and travel to India, and practice. I can't get to India if I don't have money, but also that devotion is greater than materialistic wealth.
Right. Very, very good question, isn't it? So in the Krishna culture, there's a systematic progression of life called the Varnashram system. And the early part of life is meant to be spent in study, especially in spiritual study. Then age 25, 26, thereabouts, then most people will enter the Grihastha ashram or married ashram. And this and at that stage, it's your duty to earn money. Right? The Grihasthas earn, maintain their families, and then later retire in the last two stages of spiritual pursuit full time. So of the 4 stages of life, only the married position is meant really for earning money. But they're supposed to earn money very generously because they got to support the other 3. So money is not bad. Just like a knife can be used by a thief to commit a murder, or it can be used by a surgeon to save a life. Same knife. So similarly, money can be used for constructive purposes or destructive purposes. But to think the goal of life is money is the illusion. Money is neither good or bad, it's just something to use in the service of its maker. But if it becomes everything, then everything we do will be for money. And our spiritual life will be put aside for later. See, so the idea of the student life is to prepare a person so that when they enter married life, they can maintain their spiritual practices. You don't have to give them up. They should be strong enough. That's a great advantage people have who are of Indian descent. You can enter right into married life and take up and maintain spiritual practices. That's difficult for people who are not raised the way you were raised. It is much more challenging. So that's why the ashram program, our Krishna House in Gainesville is sort of a model, it's a trial, and now we're expanding to other places around North America, establishing ashrams primarily for people from non-Indian families, although we have many Indian students as well. Everyone is welcome. The idea is to create an ashram environment where it's financially neutral, have your basic needs met, and you neither make money nor lose money, but you learn spiritual practices in such a way that they will stay ingrained in your DNA for the rest of your life and the rest of eternity. That's the idea. So sounds like you're in a sort of a position where you have spiritual pursuits and yet you have financial needs and aspirations, right? Right. So that's Um, and I often work with young people in your situation. I just encourage you, set some little time aside for spiritual development in Krishna consciousness. Set some time aside, 3 months, 6 months, where you neither make nor lose money, but you can live in an ashram, live simply, and then prepare yourself for a career in some field of your inclination. Okay. That is not as long as a student life is supposed to last. Ideally, student life starts around age 5. And you, in the Gurukula, you're a single person from age 5 to 25. And then you get into a grihastha life and start making money, household life. So one of my friends, Jayawati Swami, was explaining this, and then the person asked, well, I'm already 20 years old. So that's all right, 5 years is better than nothing. In fact, 1 year is better than nothing. In fact, 1 day is better than nothing. Why is that? One day, what's the use of 1 day? Because later you look back and say, that was the best day of my life. So yes, as much as you can, this is a new culture to you, but if you can internalize it, the beauty of Krishna consciousness is this. You have some association of so many sacred persons. And people who are economically responsible and stable and pursuing their careers, their families, but practicing meditation each day, keeping a very sincere spiritual practice, coming to the temple at least once a week, whenever possible. Does that make sense? Okay. And I suppose if anyone has any job openings on this. But there are also ashram openings if you're interested. We don't want to, you go to short when I talk. How can we start with next time? Would you like that? No. It's a big change when you have people coming in from all different walks of life, but it's an amazing experience. The temple in Toronto spent a year renovating the entire basement of their temple. It's a big church in downtown Toronto, into an ashram. They opened their Krishna house in May this year. So now that they have 6 or 8 students who are living in ashram, and 3 of them are stepping up to take leadership roles in the temple. And they haven't had new people joining there for 30, 40 years. So it's really starting a college. It's a spiritual college. Like Prabhupada said about Varnashram College, one of the Varnashram colleges and all the temples. So think about it. I told people to short Prabhu, if you put the pieces together, Toronto, Dallas, Philadelphia, Houston, these temples are all setting up ashrams to accommodate students for semester by semester basis. Just to give them the opportunity to live in the temple, to worship the deities, learn all the songs and pastimes, prepare themselves for lifelong spiritual adventure. Right, so any other comments? Daisy,
Thank you very much for a wonderful class. You are in this movement from last 50 years. You joined when, like I compared myself, I mean, when I was getting little bits of information, I had all the different source and means to check, cross-check, who's been talking to, what is background, who's Prabhupada, what is that. So did all that Googling, right? But in your time, probably it wasn't there. So what made you, take this process? What makes you think that it was real? What makes you think that it is something that you really, really want to do? Because it's a one way. I mean, it's something not just you didn't try, right? It's something that you really want to do. So what made you defeat it?
Well, in short, it was the suffering. The material nature worked very well on me. I was convinced that I was suffering. And taking up Krishna consciousness began to relieve my problems. And then the more I felt relief, the more deeply I got into it. So for me, it was not very difficult. Prabhupada made me happy. Made me happier than I had been since I was 3 years old. And I could suddenly see that the spirituality was a reality, not just something ephemeral or dramatic. And that experience was very transformative. It was so impactful for me that I never wanted to do anything else. And to see that with young people who take up the ashram experience, they have that impact in their life, which is far beyond what they expected. I know it was for me. I had no idea how ecstatic it was going to be. So the other thing is that, Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is a science. And science means three things. What are the three steps in the scientific process? Hypothesis,
Methodology.
experiment, methodology, yeah, conclusion. Experiment, hypothesis, experiment. So the hypothesis is that God is a person, his name is Krishna, he's skilled butter. The experiment is chant Hare Krishna, associate with devotees, and then draw your conclusion. That's all. There's nothing, there's no coercion, you don't charge anything. Karma back guarantee. If you don't like it, go right back to what you were doing. So that was my experience, but I was not as mature and experienced as you, so I could just say I was very fortunate. I just like the devotees, I like the Malpuras. All right, so thank you so much, pleasure. Thank you for developing this wonderful temple. It's great to see. If you would like any of our books, I just wanted to say I only have samples here. You're welcome to take a look. Hari Chakra Prabhu said you would kindly take your name, a set of all of our books, you make $50 donation, ask for whatever you want to give. If you just give your name to Hari Chakra Prabhu, name and address, they'll give them the name, we'll send them out to you. Is that all right? Thank you. Thank you, Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jai.